She stands beneath the storm-glass sky, one hand shielding her eyes, the other gripping the rail of a platform that shouldn't exist. Around her, the wind doesn't move. It presses like memory-made atmosphere. The sky is dense, sulfuric, almost golden, but broken by flashes of static that don't resemble lightning, more like neural activity in the clouds. She doesn't flinch. She's looking at something no one was meant to look at, a planet that burns without flame, a surface that turns metal into mist. Venus bought this place that feels too alive for how dead it is. Not dead like Mars. Empty, wind-scoured, waiting. Dead like a body that remembers drowning. The pressure here is 90 times Earth. You don't stand on Venus. You dissolve. Tin melts. Lead turns soft. Even the clocks here run differently. Time sinks, refuses forward motion. And yet, we keep sending things here. Machines, dreams, maps, and maybe something worse. Hope. They say Venus was once like Earth. Not similar. Not cousin. Sister. Same mass. Same gravity. Same building blocks. A planet sculpted from the same stellar dust, placed just slightly closer to the sun. That difference, just a few million kilometers, was enough to rewrite the story. Earth found equilibrium. Venus ignited. The greenhouse took hold. Water became steam. Steam became sky. Sky became trap. And under that sky, silence. A death not by lack, but by too much. Now look again. The girl steps forward. She's not in a suit. Not exactly. It's thinner, like a second skin, designed to keep her alive for minutes, not hours. This is not a mission. It's a test. Around her, towers rise like unfinished sentences. Skeletal scaffolds wrapped in ceramic mesh. This is the first resurrection chamber. A controlled experiment in planetary rebirth. 1 hectare of hope injected into a grave. The soil beneath her boots isn't native. It was imported, cultivated, enriched with microbes and memory. They buried Earth here, seed by seed, trying to coax the idea of life back from the chemical abyss. Nothing has bloomed yet, but there's a pulse, low, rhythmic, somewhere beneath the crust. A thermal anomaly, they called it. But she knows better. She listens, not like a scientist. Like someone hearing a heartbeat that shouldn't still be there. NNSHE kneels. Her gloved fingers press into the top layer of imported Earth. The fine black dust clings, despite the filtered barrier. It sticks like guilt. Behind her visor, her eyes are calm. Not hopeful, not afraid, just quiet. Like she's waiting for the planet to speak. Venus doesn't. It hums in. You need to understand. We didn't come here to explore. Not really. We came because something in us refuses to let go. We came because resurrection is not a scientific goal. It's a psychological compulsion. We can't accept that beauty can die. That a planet named for love could become a furnace. That something made of the same flesh as us could be lost forever. What if we bring it back? What if we undo the fall? What if this time, the planet loves us back? They called it Earth's twin once. But twins imply equality, and Venus has always had more gravity. Not in mass, but in meaning. Earth is home. Venus is warning. We've sent probes, balloons, imaginations. All of them melt, collapse, fade. The Soviet Venera landers lasted minutes. They touched the surface, gasped, and went silent. We listened for more. Nothing came. But the silence never left. It settled into our bones like secondhand trauma. A memory we never lived, but couldn't forget. NNSHE studies that silence now. Watches it from the edge of the dome, where synthetic glass meets raw atmosphere. Outside, the clouds swirl faster than any hurricane we've measured. Wind speeds of over 350 kilometers per hour. Except there's no breeze, no whisper, only compression. The clouds aren't made of water. They're sulfuric acid, layered like skin. Some days, they glow from inside, as if the planet itself is dreaming in toxins, as if it remembers being touched and punished. NNWE don't know what Venus looked like before the fire. There are models, blue oceans, green coasts, maybe even rain. Some claim it might have had life. Not complex, not cities, but microbial breath, clinging to the edges of time. If that's true, then we didn't just lose a planet, we lost a perspective. A version of biology that chose heat over balance. A mirror that cracked before we learned to see. NNSHE reviews the data again, projected across her retina. Pressure graphs, thermal readings, density maps. Each number is a wound. The carbon dioxide levels alone would suffocate in seconds. But the focus is on a strange outlier, a chemical signature in the upper clouds. Phosphine, a molecule that shouldn't be there. On Earth, it's a byproduct of biology. Here, it's a question with a heartbeat. Maybe not life, but something resisting death. NNTHE deeper question isn't whether we can terraform Venus. It's whether we should. Resurrection implies restoration. But what if the original never wanted to be us? What if our urge to fix is just masked control? We don't come here for Venus. We come here to rewrite ourselves. NNSHE looks up. The clouds above her shift, not naturally, but by code. Atmospheric drones are redirecting wind flows, testing microstability zones. Tiny bubbles of peace in an atmosphere designed for violence. One of the drones burns out mid-pattern, collapsing into a spiral of flame. No explosion. Just red. Then nothing. She doesn't flinch. That's the truth no one admits. We're not trying to save Venus. We're trying to see if we can survive our own mistakes, if we can reverse entropy by force, if we can unkill a planet. NNBUT planets are not projects. They are organisms. Histories. Witnesses. Imagine walking into a cathedral that burned centuries ago, not to restore it, but to ask for forgiveness. That's what this is. A confession without a priest. A prayer without a god. NNSHE paces slowly through the corridor of the dome, where the walls shimmer with thermal containment fields. Every footstep, a negotiation. Every breath, a theft. And yet, she continues, because something in her, in us, believes in the myth of return. The idea that the past is not a sentence, but a story still being revised. In Venus won't make it easy. It doesn't beg for healing. It doesn't mourn itself. That's our projection. But in the folds of its chaos, there's a shape, an outline of what might have been. We chase that shape not because it's real, but because it's ours. An emotional fossil, a blueprint of everything we fear losing. NSHE stops. Her visor reflects the sky, fractured into 13 shades of yellow. One of them, almost imperceptibly, shifts to green. Not the green of plants, the green of change, of temperature crossing a line, a threshold. Invisible but irreversible. And Venus doesn't blink, but she does. In that moment, she sees it. Not the planet we want, but the one that waits. Not a second Earth, but a first something else. Not resurrection. Not repetition. Mutation. And maybe that's what we've misunderstood. We keep asking, how do we bring Venus back? But maybe the question is, how do we meet her where she is? Not as conquerors. Not as saviors. But as listeners. And Generin, what if the planet's silence is not absence, but language? What if we're just beginning to hear the first word? The wind here is not wind. It doesn't move across the skin. It presses inward, as if the air itself has density, memory, motive. You don't walk through it. You push against it, like liquid steel. On Venus, the atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide. That number means nothing. Until you imagine it like this. Every breath turns your lungs into acid. Every blink becomes a burn. Every heartbeat is amplified by pressure thick enough to crush a submarine. NNBUT then, higher up 55 kilometers above the surface, something shifts. The temperature is bearable. The pressure, survivable. The light, diffuse, orange, warm like filtered firelight through dust. Here, in these clouds, we dream of floating cities, suspended habitats. Human bodies drifting in breathable pockets above a planet that still resists touch. NNSHE hovers in one of those layers now, inside a lab tethered to nothing. A balloon-shaped vessel, translucent from below, reflective above. Like a thought held between fear and hope. Around her, instruments whisper their findings. Atmospheric composition, refracted light angles, biochemical traces. But she's focused on the chamber in the center, a glass sphere the size of a heart, filled with vapor and phosphine and a strain of engineered extremophiles. Life may be adapted to this sky. NNTHE machine simulates Venusian conditions, not all at once. In pulses, bursts. Like it's breathing with the planet, testing the rhythm of survival. And inside the glass, the microbes move. Not much. Just enough to register change. Enough to hint, this isn't death. It's a threshold. It's easy to forget that Earth's oxygen was once a byproduct. A mistake, made by microbial ancestors who flooded the sky with waste until it became our breath. What if Venus had its own accident, but in reverse? What if it once breathed like us, and then lost the will? The microbes in this lab are not proof of life, they're echoes. Like tuning forks ringing against alien silence, NNSHE watches one of them divide. Slowly, deliberately, as if aware of being observed. That's the thing about science. The facts matter, but it's the metaphors that stay. You can say the clouds rotate every 4 Earth days. Or you can say, Venus moves like a memory you can't shake, slowly beneath, violently above, a surface that crawls while the sky races. Time misaligned. There's a theory that Venus flipped, not just on its axis, but emotionally. That something destabilized its core, turned rotation backward. Inverted magnetic poles. If that's true, then this planet didn't just die. It turned itself inside out. A psychological collapse on a planetary scale, NNSHE doesn't speak. But she places her hand on the chamber. The heat from her skin doesn't reach the microbes, but the gesture is read by the machine. The chamber adjusts slightly, compensates, responds. The illusion of interaction, but illusions matter. That's how we learn. That's how we believe. And outside, the balloon vessel drifts through a pocket of chemical shimmer. The light refracts through droplets of acid, splitting into unexpected colors. Jade, lavender, rust. Venus has no blue, no true sky, but it has a palette all its own. Not welcoming, not hostile, just other. WE often talk about terraforming as if it's architecture. Change the pressure, adjust the atmosphere, seed the soil. But that's not resurrection. That's conversion. To resurrect something means to restore its soul. And Venus's soul, if it has one, is not Earth's. NNSHE writes something in her log. Not data. A line. A sentence without explanation. They keep trying to plant Earth here, but maybe Venus has its own seeds. She doesn't elaborate. NNTHE vessel shakes, subtly. A thermal spike beneath the cloud layer. Possibly volcanic activity. Possibly something deeper. Venus has no plate tectonics. Its crust is a shell, unmoving. But sometimes heat builds, pressure rises, and the planet exhales in bursts, resurfacing everything. No scars, no record. Just new skin over old ruin. That's the deepest difference between Earth and Venus. Earth remembers, through mountains, rivers, fossils. Venus erases. Every few 100 million years, it starts over. Not out of mercy, but necessity. A planet with amnesia by design. NNSHE looks out through the observation panel. The horizon curves unnaturally, not because of height, but because of distortion. Gravity here is familiar, but heavy. not in pull, but in presence. Like the planet is watching, and maybe it is. What if Venus doesn't need to change? What if it's already doing what it was made to do? What if the problem is that we keep asking it to become us? They always thought of Venus as fixed, a planet arrested in failure, locked in thermal inertia. But something's shifting. The data's too quiet, not in absence, but in pattern. The surface temperatures vary in decimals, then stabilize again. Certain regions show faint electromagnetic signatures, inconsistent, irrational. Atmospheric profiles deviate without wind. It's not chaos. It's something subtler. A kind of waiting NNSHE walks through the lower corridor of the orbital lab, lit only by pulse glow strips beneath her boots. Outside the viewport, Venus turns slowly, a crescent of corrosion and gold. The planet reflects barely any light. It absorbs. And now, the instruments say, it reflects less than before, as if it's drawing something inward. NNSHE pauses at a suspended panel, a real-time topography scan of Ishtar Terra, a region where anomalies keep surfacing. The surface looks solid, but maps flicker. Shapes shift subtly, as if the crust is breathing, trying to reconfigure itself. No tectonics, no drift, and yet the land adjusts. What could that mean? Somewhere between magma and atmosphere, something's giving, not erupting, bending with that. There's a theory, not widely published, that Venus is entering a new thermal phase. A slow spiral toward metastability. Not quite cooling, not quite dying, more like reformatting. The pressure, the composition, the atmospheric churn, it's not the aftermath of catastrophe, it's a prelude. The planet isn't waiting to be fixed. It's preparing to transform. NNSHE uploads a new observational routine, not to analyze, to listen. The module begins reading subsonic tremors. The sound, low, stretched, almost like breathing through rock. It isn't rhythmic. But it isn't noise. We've always framed terraforming as a one-way intervention. We shape the world, but what if it shapes us? What if exposure to Venus isn't just technical, it's perceptual? A planetary field of influence not in gravity, but cognition. A mirror not of climate, but intention. NNSHE remembers the first time she dreamed in Venusian light, not the real kind, the internal kind. Dream sequences soaked in amber. Soundless motion, the feeling that time folds in one direction. That logic detaches, not madness, just difference. As if the planet had a language beneath physics, and her body was starting to learn the alphabet. Since then, the crew has changed. Quietly. Slightly. No visible breakdowns. Just more silence. Longer pauses. Fewer explanations. They still work. Still measure. But something in them has softened. Their voice is slow. They speak in shorter thoughts. She watches them sometimes. It's not fear. It's adaptation. That's when she begins to suspect. Venus is not being resurrected. NNTHE surface isn't warming. We are becoming porous. Not to heat, but to meaning. Like a threshold crossed without knowing. Like a dream you don't remember entering, but can't fully leave. NNSHE stands at the edge of the observation deck. Below her, the thickening bands of clouds rotating faster than Earth's jet stream, silent as memory. The planet doesn't resist them. It offers no resistance. Only a slow spiraling acceptance. And in that stillness, it dawns on her. And this isn't about habitability, or science, or even history. It's about narrative. And NWE came to Venus to prove a point that we could undo failure, that no planet is too far gone, that no path is irreversible. NNBUT. Maybe Venus was never the failed twin, and maybe it was the older one, the first attempt, the one that learned, and maybe Earth is the reckless sister, still naive, still in balance by accident, and Venus, Venus is the one that burned early, died early, and now watches in silence. NNOT because she wants saving. NNBUT because she's already seen what happens next. NNSHE closes her eyes. Breathe slowly. The air here is filtered, cold, safe. But somewhere beneath 50 kilometers of atmosphere away, there is a surface where lead flows like wax and stone glows from within, where time is thick and light bends with pressure. And yet something inside that place waits NNNOT for us. Venus isn't changing. What if it's already changed? And what we're witnessing is not an evolution. It's a rehearsal. Beneath the clouds, there is no weather, only consequence. Every molecule is thick with memory. Every inch of atmosphere remembers the ocean it used to be. Venus does not rotate like Earth. One day lasts longer than a year. Sunrises happen so slowly they become myths. Time stretches, buckles, and forgets itself. If you stood on the surface, if you somehow survived, you would see the sun rise in the west, crawl across a yellow sky, and set in the east. Backward, reversed. The direction of grief. NNSHE studies that reversal now, not as anomaly, but as intention. In her hands, a carbon lattice sample pulses under artificial simulation. It behaves unpredictably, not because it's malfunctioning, but because the structure adapts faster than the model. The atoms reposition themselves in ways no one programmed, not toward Earth norm, toward Venusian equilibrium. Chemistry, deciding NNTHE room is quiet. Lights low. The simulation chamber breathes in heat and exhales fluorescence. She runs her fingers along the outer rim. A habit, a ritual. The texture feels like cooled blood, matte, synthetic, unyielding. But inside, life. Or something so close it hurts. We've always assumed life needs water, a narrow band of temperature, a softness. But the more we learn, the more the definition trembles. Life isn't a condition, it's a refusal, a scream inside physics that doesn't stop. On Earth, it started in boiling vents at the bottom of oceans. Not in paradise, but in pressure. Maybe Venus isn't dead. Maybe it's just louder than we are. NNSHE walks through the artificial garden, not for beauty, but for calibration. Rows of plants genetically modified to endure edge conditions. The leaves shimmer with oil-slick hues. Photosynthesis adapted to orange light. Roots drinking condensation through nanofiber channels. And in the center, a single white flower, fragile, half-opened. Not native, not meant for survival, but blooming anyway. It shouldn't be alive here. And yet, Venus in this garden feels closer than Earth. Like the planet is reaching up, not with hands, but with questions. Not in what is softness under pressure. What is beauty in acid? What is time if it folds inward? NNSHE answers none of them. Only adjusts the chamber's parameters by a fraction of a degree, not to control, but to listen. That's the pivot point. Terraforming used to mean domination. The hammer of engineering. Strip, seed, colonize. But what if resurrection means consent? What if a planet, like a body, chooses what it will hold? There's a new theory, fringe, but rising, that environments shape perception. Not metaphorically, neuronally. That exposure to alien atmospheres triggers cognitive shifts. Not hallucinations, adaptations. Some crew members report changes in sleep architecture. Others, auditory anomalies. She's begun to smell ozone where none exists. To feel warmth in data. To weep at curve graphs. NNTHE director wrote it off as emotional fatigue. She didn't disagree. But fatigue doesn't alter memory. Doesn't implant sensations you never lived. NNSHE closes her eyes again, standing between two biospheres. One filled with controlled Earth air. One with filtered Venusian mix. She breathes both. Not simultaneously, alternately. Like tasting dialects of a future language. And inside her, something aligns in a sensation, Not of revelation, but of rearrangement, NNTHE girl in the dream appears again. She is not dressed for science. She wears fabric that flows, that responds to gravity like breath. Her face is unreadable, not blank, just ahead of language. She stands on the real surface. No dome, no gear. Her skin shimmers with sweat and starlight. She's not surviving. She belongs N. And for the first time, the scientist doesn't reject the image. Doesn't label it as delusion. She welcomes it. Not as prophecy. As permission. What if we're not here to rewrite Venus? What if she's rewriting us? What if the planet's true surface isn't physical but perceptual? And the resurrection is in the way we learn to see. It begins with the small things. Dreams that don't fade. Temperature readings that feel emotional. A softness in the voice of colleagues who once only spoke in data. She started recording notes at night. Not findings, but impressions. Sentences like, "The wind sounded slower today," or, "I think the clouds were listening." She doesn't submit these, but they accumulate. Not in reports, in her. In Venus does that. It doesn't break you. It folds you, like heat folds metal. Not into destruction, into a new shape. And it's not just her. Across the orbital outpost, behavior has shifted. Conversations carry pauses where none are needed. Eye contact lingers. People touch walls when they think no one's watching. As if the station itself were alive. Or as if they're trying to remember what alive means. NNSHE replays a message from Earth. A standard report. Flat, clipped, efficient. It sounds wrong, not incorrect, just thin. Like a voice broadcast through glass. The urgency of Earth feels misplaced here, like trying to shout underwater. Venus doesn't respond to urgency. It erodes it. NNHE's own voice has changed. She hears it on playback. Slower. Quieter. Like someone speaking into a dream and not expecting a reply. This morning, she watched a droplet of condensation trace its way down the dome. Not because it mattered, but because it moved like a thought she couldn't finish. It drifted, then stopped. Hung suspended, refusing to fall. Venusian gravity is near Earth's. But it feels heavier. Not in physics. In narrative, NNWE, keep thinking resurrection is a decision, a threshold crossed. But maybe it's not a moment. Maybe it's a saturation point. A slow accumulation of permission. She's begun to feel it in her body, the way light wraps around her skin differently inside the atmospheric chamber. The way shadows lengthen even under static lamps. Her dreams are no longer fragmented. They arrive complete. Landscapes she's never seen but knows in her bones. A beach made of glass. A tree that breathes in rings. A city made entirely of echoes. And always, somewhere, the girl. Watching. Not guiding. Not speaking. Just present. NTHE tests continue. The microbes thrive. Too well. They adapt faster than anticipated, incorporating Venusian sulfur chains into their metabolic cycles. The AI models lag. They can't keep up. Life here is not resisting the conditions. It's using them, and NTHAT terrifies her and comforts her. Because what if that's the truth? That life is not a gift or a miracle. It's an inevitability, a tendency of matter to reach back toward itself, no matter how hostile the field. And maybe, just maybe, Venus didn't lose life. And maybe it became it NNNOT in cells, in pressure, in pattern, in the way everything here leans inward. And then SHE places her hand on the dome, where the glass is warm from internal thermal cycling. Below, the synthetic valley glows faintly with reflected light. And somewhere in that light, maybe just for a moment, she sees movement. Not human, not machine. Something slow, purposeful, gone before it can be questioned. And then no one else saw it. And then no one else needed to. And then SHE thinks about Earth now like a memory of childhood. Familiar, but no longer current. It's not that she's forgotten it, but that its urgency has loosened. She doesn't crave return. She craves continuation, not escape. Integration. NNSHE whispers a thought, unrecorded. Maybe I'm not terraforming Venus. Maybe Venus is terraforming me. And the strange thing is, that doesn't frighten her. NNSHE touches her chest. Her heartbeat is slower, not pathologically, just rhythmically, like her body has recalibrated to a different kind of time. And Venus time.NNSHE knows the reports won't believe her. They'll ask for replicability, for metrics. But how do you measure internal shift? How do you graph awe? NNSHE thinks again of the girl, not as a metaphor now, but as a possibility, a future form. Someone shaped by acid light, dense air, delayed dawn. Someone whose eyes reflect not the sun, but memory itself. What if the resurrection we speak of isn't planetary, but perceptual? What if to bring Venus back, we must first become the kind of beings who can survive her truth? And what if that transformation is already happening? This is already happening. NNNOT in decades. She stands alone now, just outside the biodome's last perimeter, where the artificial systems end and the true atmosphere begins. Her suit is sealed, pressure-locked, limited to 27 minutes of survival. But this isn't a mission anymore. It's a conversation. One-sided. Unspoken. She watches the sky turn, not fast, but with an intensity that makes time feel like tension. The clouds curl like breath over old scars. Every movement, slow, saturated, heavy with something unnameable. NNNO, more data feeds. No directives, just silence. The kind that isn't empty, just too full to speak. NSHE kneels and places a small, transparent prism into the ground. It's nothing. A calibration tool designed to measure surface reflectivity. But now it feels ceremonial, like planting a thought. The prism catches the light and splits it, not into colors, but into memories. Fragments of atmosphere bent into visible ghosts. For a second, she sees her own reflection, not as she is, but as she might have been. Skin adapted to heat, hair matte with sulfur. Eyes that don't flinch at burning skies. NNSHE exhales slowly, the sound barely audible inside the suit. Her body feels different here. Not weak, not endangered, just porous. Like she's becoming part of the equation instead of standing outside it. There's no God in this place, no myth, only mechanics, violent, precise, relentless. And yet, beneath all that, something tender. Not gentle. Tender. Like a wound healing in a shape you didn't choose. NNTHE. Last signal from Earth was 2 days ago. A delay in relays. A system hiccup. But part of her wonders if she even wants the line restored. Earth feels like the first draft of a sentence that Venus is trying to finish. And behind her, the dome flickers once. An energy fluctuation. Then stabilizes. Inside, the microbes continue. The plants stretch toward infrared. The soil darkens with chemical breath. No celebration. No explosion of green. Just slow permission. NNSHE closes her eyes. And in that inner dark, the final image comes. NNTHE girl. Closer now. Not in the distance. Not metaphor. Real. She walks across the acid plains barefoot. Her skin unburned. Her posture not defiant, but aligned. She doesn't conquer the planet. She doesn't fix it. She doesn't even ask it to speak. NNSHE listens. And Venus responds. NNNOT in words. Not in symbols, but in temperature. In rhythm. In the gravity of stillness. The girl doesn't change Venus. Venus changes the idea of what kind of life is possible. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the goal was never to remake this planet. Maybe the goal was to unmake our assumptions. NNTO peel back the architecture of certainty. To let the impossible breathe, NSHE opens her eyes again. The prism glows faintly. The ground beneath her boots shudders once, imperceptibly. A minor quake, perhaps. Or just the planet adjusting its weight. And then she speaks. Not loudly, not for recording. Just enough for the helmet mic to catch it. What if resurrection isn't reversal? NNO response. What if it's mutation? NSHE watches the sky ripple. And what if we're not meant to bring Venus back, but to go forward with her? And the final question, quieter than breath, slipping into the planet like a seed. What if we were never Earth's children, but Venus's second chance? NTHE silence holds. No revelation. No breakthrough. And just her heartbeat. Slowed. Present. Matched NAS. If, for the first time in human memory, a planet and a person are breathing in the same rhythm. NNOT resurrection. NNOT redemption. Not resonance.